Did I make mistakes? Of course. Everybody does. Did I make mistakes in bad faith? I don't think so. I think I made mistakes in good faith, one of which was to trust people who turned out to be deeply untrustworthy. The media's silence on the Ford report is absolutely deafening. The Guardian, the BBC and others that obsessed day in, day out on my supposed deficiencies barely mentioned it. The Ford report has been a long time coming out. My thoughts are, one, that it is comprehensive. Two, it has a rather false narrative of saying there were two camps in the party who were equally bad towards each other, which I actually rather resent and reject. As the leader of the party, I appointed a team around me in order to liaise with the party and run things, and they were constantly undermined from the Labour Party head office. But park that for a moment. I think that the Ford report calls into question the behaviour of senior officials of the party, in particular during the 2017 election, when completely unbeknown to me, the General Secretary diverted a very substantial tranche of our much needed funds towards what he called the Ergon House project, which was to protect the majorities of a number of MPs, all of whom had one thing in common, being undermining and critical of my leadership of the party, and would be part of a leadership challenge straight after the 2017 election, had the result been very much different to what it was. And I find that utterly appalling.
You've also said each day I try and think of ways to undermine Jeremy Corbyn.
I did say that, yes.
Well, that was a mistake, wasn't it?
Well, no, I wasn't alone amongst people who found his performance disappointing.
If he'd had your backing, he might have done a lot better.
Well, he might have done.
We achieved 41% in that election. We could and should have achieved more had the party been united in at least accepting that the leadership had a case to put to the people of this country. And this was borne out very much by the leaked report, which came out more than 2 years later, on the behaviour of very senior officials in WhatsApp group that seemed to be in constant touch with each other, which were disparaging about the policy, the manifesto, and individually very abusive towards senior people in our team, using racist and misogynist language. Despicable. It's not about me. It's not about sour grapes. What it's about is that our manifesto offered hope on public ownership, on an education service, on a mental health service, environmental concerns, on an international strategy of peace and justice and democracy and human rights. And all of this mobilised so many people and gave so much hope to people. Little did they know that the party they were funding in order to achieve this, a significant number of very senior officials were working against everything that was being said and done. It's never happened before in Labour election campaigns. I've been in the party under many leaders. When I first became a party member, Harold Wilson was the leader of the Labour Party. I've been there through all of that. I've often disagreed with party policy. I've disagreed with the direction the party's taken. I've disagreed with the politics of individual leaders. But I've never sought to go out and defeat Labour in an election. When I was elected leader of the Labour Party, it was never about me. It was about a popular demand for anti-austerity policies following the disastrous financial crisis of 2008. Therefore, the attacks so well documented in the Ford report were actually attacks on democracy and attacks on those people that wanted to live in a world of hope. Many people have now had an opportunity to read the Ford report in detail, and I think that opportunity should be used to say, well, actually, we need to have a restoration of democracy in the party. And many people who've been through the most awful stress of having been suspended from party membership, in some cases expelled from party membership, feel that an injustice has been done. I think these injustices have to be righted. Wrongs must be righted. That surely is the best way of bringing the party together.
We've got to unite our party or we won't win.
I inherited a system that was dysfunctional. The leader's office was far too involved in day-to-day disciplinary matters. This is the way it had always been done in the party. If you're suspending members or even expelling members or investigating members, that somehow or other the leader's office should have a comment to make on this. I didn't want that. I thought there should be a separate process independent of the leader's office, and they should not be involved. So I developed a process of separation, and I invited Shami Chakrabarti to examine the issues of anti-Semitism and disciplinary processes at the party, and she did produce a very thorough and comprehensive set of proposals to do that. What I later discovered was that some of the cases where allegations were made of anti-Semitic behaviour by party members that we ourselves had referred to the party because they'd been referred to me were then delayed, and I got the blame for them not being handled correctly, which I find more than discomforting and disconcerting. We were honest in our determination to root out anti-Semitism, but I was also very clear about the number of cases and number of complaints there had been. And I made that clear in my response to the Equalities and Human Rights Commission report that was made into the party. I said, anti-Semitism is wrong. I support the findings of the HRC report. I support rule changes to implement those findings. I also said that the levels and prevalence of anti-Semitism in the Labour Party had been grossly exaggerated. The number of people accused of anti-Semitism was actually quite small. My membership was briefly suspended the day that I made that statement. I appealed against it with a very strong statement and a huge body of evidence to explain that this was completely wrong, and I was unanimously reinstated by an NEC panel. And then I got word that the whip would not be restored until I took back everything I'd said. And this has gone on ever since. The Ford report, in my view, completely vindicates the position that I took. The fight against racism will be won by a party united to defeat racism in its entirety in all aspects of our society. That is what I've spent my life doing. That is what I'll spend the rest of my life doing. Well, I was suspended from membership of the Labour Party for a Facebook post that I put up, which was actually a considered response to a significant report and document. It's very strange that many of those people that spoke up against curtailment of free speech.
This has become a row over freedom of speech.
A wave of censorship that seeks to silence conversation, to stifle debate.
We're talking about freedom of speech.
Shutting down freedom of expression.
I set up the Free Speech Union.
Were remarkably silent where I was concerned. I think it's not a disgrace that the whip was removed from me, because our party is supposed to be a democratic party, and the authority to become MPs, to become leading figures in the Labour Party, does not come from the parliamentary party. It comes from the membership and the affiliated membership through the trade unions. That's how I was elected leader. That's how Keir Starmer was elected leader. If we're now in a position where the leader of the party will use his power over the parliamentary party to remove somebody from the whip, it's very perplexing for my constituency. I was first elected in 1983, so next year I will have been a Member of Parliament for the same constituency on the same boundaries for 40 years. And I work as hard as I've ever worked to represent the people that have put their trust in me. The attacks on me, which have now been analysed and chronicled and dealt with in the Ford report, vindicate everything we said and did in 2015 onwards. And I'm proud of the changes we brought about. Very proud all around the country when I meet people who say they were inspired and mobilised by the new mood that we brought to the Labour Party and to politics in this country. If we're going to be condemned for that, then I'm proud to be condemned for that, because I absolutely believe in the power of ordinary people to bring about change. I've spent my life doing that. But you know what? I'm going to spend the rest of my life doing that as well. You can't rely on the mainstream media to cover the Ford report, so we rely on others. The independent media are analysing it, are reporting it, and are covering it. So, if you can, join Double Down News on Patreon.